It was a few weeks later, I think I was like, you know what? I might as well weed him out now because if this scares him,
True. Yeah.
how he responds is gonna like say a lot. So I told him, and it was just like I worked it up as this big thing in my mind, and then it was so not a big deal. Like he took it really seriously when I told him, but it
Mm.
was just like, I wish you would have told me. I could have rescheduled, I could have supported you better. Like he responded so well to it. And I think the right person is always going to respond well to it.
I think it's no secret that I love the Little Words Project bracelets. I have about 6 or 7 on my arm, ones that have been given to me, ones I've bought myself. I love giving them as gifts. I think they're so inspirational for me personally. They're nice little reminders throughout my day to have hope, to be, have strength, to be in good energy. I just love the bracelets so much. I love giving them. I love receiving them. And if you want to check them out and you want to give it as a gift or get one for yourself, you can use our code QTC for 15% off your first order. Lauren, I am so excited to have you here. Welcome to Quiet the Clock. I appreciate you being here. I found you on Instagram and all your content and immediately DM'd you and wanted you on this podcast. So I'm so excited to have you here and have this conversation.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. So I kind of want to dive into like your personal story and then I want to ask you some questions about your expertise because like I said, you're putting amazing, super informative, super helpful content out there. I think a lot of content that women don't know and are just sort of learning and I'm kind of learning along the way through my secondary infertility journey. So I just find it so valuable. But I wanted to start with your journey or the start of your fertility journey.
Yeah. So I think the real start of my journey was around when I was 29. I'm about to turn 33 just for like the time frame reference. But it kind of started because I wanted to have kids so badly, but I was in these relationships where the commitment wasn't there. And so I had this like ticking, time bomb in my mind. The
Yeah.
biological clock is so real. So very fitting name for your podcast.
It's so
Yeah.
true.
So
The time and the pressure and everything, it just really is a lot.
yeah. And some of it is outside pressure, but a lot of it I really do believe is just like our innate, instincts that like our bodies are trying to tell us that it's time. So I was 29 and I was dating a guy and he broke up with me. And so I was like, oh no, now I feel really, really far from my goal of having children. Like now I'm 29 and single and I'm like starting all over, which of course
Mm.
29 is still young, but that was how I was feeling at the
Oh
time.
my gosh, at the time, totally. And I think sort of approaching 30, and this is sort of where this podcast is born, is just thinking in our 30s, all the pressure that comes. And I know women in their 20s feel it too, but I feel like 30s is the decade where it really starts to compound. So being just about to approach 30, I imagine all of those sort of narratives are running through your head.
Exactly. Yeah. So I remember doing research, and by research, I was just like Googling, can you check your egg count or how can you measure your fertility? Because I didn't even know. And I
Mm.
was already a health coach at the time, but just more like general health coaching. And I hadn't done much research on fertility and hormones and all of that. So that's kind of where it all started to begin. But I looked into ways that you could test fertility. And I just thought about it, like, okay, am I ready to take this step? Like, it just felt kind of weird. But then I was watching an episode of New Girl, and on the show, they go and like they make it kind of lighthearted and funny, but they go and they check on their egg count. And so I
Oh
was
my
like, oh my
God, that was like
gosh,
a sign.
yes, yeah. So I go and get everything checked out. I go to my OBGYN and they did an AMH test, which for those listening is a possible projector of your ovarian reserve. It's not totally perfect, but if you can get a normal number, a low number, or sometimes you get a super high number, which is usually like what people see with PCOS. And I honestly assumed everything was going to be normal because I'm a
Mm.
healthy person. And so they called me and they told me my AMH was very, very low and that my number correlated to somebody who was nearly approaching menopause, like someone who was in their late 30s or 40. No, sorry, not late 30s, in their mid 40s. And I was 29.
Wow.
So
How did you feel? You said you weren't really expecting that news. Like, and you have this desire to have children, and you're kind of like the biological clock is ticking. How did you feel
right.
when you got that news?
Yeah, at the time, it was just a lot of fear, and quite honestly, I'm sure some people can relate to this. I didn't really know what it fully meant, so I thought it was the worst news ever. I thought this might mean that I'm not going to be able to have kids. This might mean that I'm infertile. This is going to make the road really hard. I'm definitely going to have to do IVF. Like, all those thoughts were going through my mind, and that's when the research hurt me in that moment, because it was like I was seeing stuff on the internet that maybe wasn't exactly the full picture, wasn't exactly the way that things are. So there was just a lot of fear initially, but then I immediately wanted to spring into action, and I immediately was like, okay, I want to get the testing done. I want to see a fertility doctor. I want to explore the option of freezing my eggs. I was already open to that possibility because I told myself, like, even if everything comes back normal, I think I'm still going to freeze my eggs just because I want that there. Mm-hmm. So then it became a feeling of, I feel like I have to freeze my eggs.
Yeah. From that place, I know that obviously been watching your content and checking out. I think there was a reel that said, and I want you to share your whole journey because it was a long journey. But you said you moved from hopeless to empowered. And I had a very similar experience freezing my egg, or very similar perspective at first. When I froze my eggs at 37, it was more of like, I have to. And for me, from the I have to place, I was far from empowered. I felt angry, frustrated, sad. So I'm curious sort of how you moved from hopeless and fear to what your reel said, which was empowered.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that is my goal for any woman who's in the same position, but it does take a lot to get there, a lot of trust, a lot of learning. For me, I always say, like, knowledge really is power. Having this information, I just had to kind of flip my mindset and say, how amazing is it that I did get the intuition to go check, and now I have this information and I can do something about it before it's, like, too late, or before I have regret. Before I wish I wish I could go back in time. Like, I'm able to do it now. So flipping that mindset, and it was a constant reminder. I kept having to tell myself that, because, your brain wants to keep pushing you back to that, like, fearful state. Mm-hmm. So that was part of it. The more I learned about, okay, I thought I was living healthy, but there's actually a lot of things that I could change. Like my stress. I was ignoring my stress levels. I was ignoring my sleep. I was eating well and exercising, but I wasn't supporting my hormones and fertility. And I think one of the biggest light bulbs that went off was when I started to think of my body, or starting to need to think of my body as a safe place for a baby. And so I would do certain things and be like, this state that I'm in, this is not a safe place for a baby. I need to do something about this. Yeah.
I love that way of thinking. I love that way of thinking about it. I had a guest on, actually her episode just dropped, and she sort of similar lens and perspective or narrative is to think about, I think this ties to the mental emotional part. Like, if your baby was already watching you, like, how do you want to show up each day? Like, how do you want to be? And I think that speaks to, like, emotionally, or are we going to be in fear, or are we going to be in trust? So I love that, thinking about, like, just that holistic picture of what's going to invite a baby in. And from that place, I think we're just living healthfully in a more healthy way anyway. I wanted to back up to you having this intuition and then bringing it up to your doctor, because I've had so many guests on, and even my own personal experience, where these conversations are not being had in gynecologic offices. And then, women are getting to fertility doctors or clinics too late. What was your experience, you being the one to bring that conversation up to your doctor?
Yeah. So unfortunately, I've heard stories of other women and friends of mine that have heard my story and gone to their doctor, and their doctor said stuff like, oh, you're too young to worry about that. You don't need to worry about it yet, since you're not trying to have kids yet. And I am, like, so frustrated when I hear that, because it's just very dismissive. And I think it's totally the opposite of empowerment. So luckily, I brought it up to my doctor, and she said, you know what? Yeah, sure, we can test for that. I think that that's really smart. As a matter of fact, you can go to the lab draw right here, right down the hall. We can do it right now. We'll have your results in a couple of days, and it'll be information for you. It'll be information that you can choose to do with it what you want. You can take action or not. And so she was amazing about it. What I would tell other women is if you have that intuition and if you want to get this test, if you want to explore your fertility, we have to be our own advocates in healthcare. And you just got to be strong and confident in expressing your needs. And if they tell you, they're not going to tell you no, but they could discourage you, to which I would say just stand your ground.
Yeah. I found for my journey too, like, it's like sometimes I'm curious your thoughts on this too. It's like knowledge is power, but I think then there's an overwhelm of knowledge or too much digging.
Yes.
But for me, I was like, I really got into a hole after my first miscarriage and I was just like reading everything. And my partner was like, you need to stop. And I was like, you don't understand. Like, I need the knowledge to be able to ask the questions. Like, I didn't even have the questions. And so I think it's so important to also be informed to be able to be an advocate, because it can be intimidating and it'd be hard to like say to a doctor, do this test, and they give you kind of all the reasons you don't need it. But if you have the knowledge, then you can say, well, here's why I still want it.
Yes, absolutely. And it is a fine line and a delicate balance of knowing too much, or I call it analysis paralysis, and having the information that you need. And I think people have to just kind of recognize that in themselves. Some people do better with a little bit less information. Some people do better with more. But I think being able to recognize, when is this information actually starting to be toxic to me and start to actually add stress? And when is it something that's making me feel strong and empowered and good, and knowing where to kind of draw the line.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. So you get this news, you're kind of ready to jump into action. So did you decide right away to go into the egg freezing, or did you sit with it for a little bit? What was the decision-making process?
I think,
and kind of the timeline from finding out the news to starting your first round.
Yeah. So I found out I was 29 and it was October. I think it was 2020, the lovely year of 2020, such a challenging year. And so in 2021, like January, I want to say, by that time I had gotten back all the other testing. Because once you find out you have low AMH, then they take you in for, if you want to continue testing, get an ultrasound so they can actually look at your follicles and confirm, okay, yeah, that's right, you don't have a lot of follicles there. And get genetic testing done to see if they can find out a reason for this. And so I got all the testing done, and then the next step was going to be egg freezing. And so when I got everything back, it was kind of inconclusive. It was like the diagnosis of unexplained infertility, which is also really infuriating, because I'm like, I'm sure there's a cause here, like somewhere that we just can't dig into. So I was pretty ready to freeze my eggs. I guess it was, early 2021. So I sat on it for a couple months, but it was really as I was just like awaiting my results. But I was pretty sure that was what I was going to do anyway, but I didn't really know exactly what I was in for. So I knew it was going to be expensive. I think everyone's heard it's expensive. So I was taking that time to prepare myself, like mentally and financially, look into like, what does insurance cover and all that. So, but the decision was made.
So this is a lot of, and if you don't want to share this, that's totally fine. But it's a lot of, I mean, the finance is such a big component of this, and just another kind of nuance and layer as you're dealing with all the other parts of it. But that's a big question I get asked a lot, like cost, and if it was out of pocket or insurance. And for me, it was out of pocket. I had to put it on a credit card, but I get a lot of questions about that. So I'm curious if you don't mind answering, like, how did you prepare financially? And also, did you know, just to like jump ahead a little bit, you ended up doing five rounds.
Yes.
So yeah, I'd love for you to kind of speak to that, like how you prepared for that financially. And I'm maybe assuming you didn't know it would be 5 rounds.
Correct. They kind of let me know the expectation of people with low ovarian reserve. You may only get 2 or 3 eggs every time, as opposed to someone who everything looks normal. They could go in 1 round and get 17, 20 something, you know? Yeah. So they did warn me it might be a few rounds. And my doctor had a number that maybe it's arbitrary or maybe it's something she calculated, but she felt like 20 eggs was a good number, and that it might it might take me anywhere from 4 to 6 rounds to get there. So preparing financially. Well, if I'm being honest, I I just was like, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna figure out no matter what. I don't have the money right now. So I paid what I could. I put some on credit cards. And yeah, I went into debt for the years that I was doing this. And I'm not saying I recommend women to do that, but I would just consider, is it worth the financial burden temporarily if you feel like you're going to be able to get out of that hole, to prepare for your future? Because in my eyes, it was an investment. Yes, this was a unique investment that was putting me into debt at the same time, but it was an investment in my future. And yeah, it was hard to come out of that. I think I spent out of pocket with the 5 rounds, something like close to almost like $50,000 when it was all said and done. And it was over the course of 2.5 or 3 years. And my insurance did cover some of it, but that's what I still paid on top of it. So it's truly sinful how much they're charging for infertility treatments. But yeah, there's little tips out there. Like I discovered a pharmacy out of Atlanta. I can't remember what it's even called, but there are pharmacies that charge less. So I would also give the advice of like, and maybe you've given this advice before, but shop around, because like it was a fraction of the price at this pharmacy, and they shipped to me even though I wasn't local to them. So definitely shop around. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that goes for clinics too, because there are clinics that are, it's all about also too where you feel comfortable and safe, but there are clinics too that are offering different ways to support this financial piece. And I'm with you. It's sort of criminal, and it's infuriating that it's so expensive, and it's such a barrier to access for so many people. And I love your point of like really sitting with, is it worth it? I had to sit with that too. I also went into debt for it, and for me, it was like, at the end of the day, it's something I truly desired. And I did not want to like look back years later and regret not having made that choice.
Yeah.
And I think it's, the message is that it is possible. Is it hard? For sure, especially if you have to come up with a way to afford this, but there are ways for sure. I think if you really want it to, I hate that that's often like the reason people, they did want it. And then they're just like, I can't do it.
Yeah. And I think too, for people to think, like for me, I definitely felt a really, really, really big sense of urgency. But if I'm looking back on it with the knowledge that I have now, I could have certainly spaced them out a lot more and let myself catch up a little bit more financially, because I was trying to knock them out so fast, because I felt like every month I'm losing more and I'm losing time. And that's not really the case. Like from 1 month to 6 months later, like most likely your situation's not changing so much. So if you need to space it out, even if someone wants to do it once a year or something like that, I think just telling yourself like, I am taking the action that I need. I do have some time, and not be so rash and feel so urgent like I did. That's something that I would probably do different.
Yeah, I could not agree. I had the same experience. I think that is, especially in my secondary journey, infertility journey, the urgency or lack of patience has not served me well. And I think, speaking to the title of this podcast, from that place of feeling, whether it's dating or fertility, from that place of urgency or impatience, we're so anxious, and we're kind of like maybe not sitting with things, and maybe not thinking we have all of this time. But, I agree with you. I think had I not acted from that place of urgency, I would have made better choices, but also normalizing it's kind of hard not to when you're feeling that urgency.
Right. Yeah. It goes back to the balance again. Just like a little sense of urgency is probably good, but not letting it totally take over and taking action out of fear, because that was definitely what I was doing. And now, I've been on this hormone support journey and doing all these other things that I was kind of doing at the time of freezing my eggs. But if I would have slowed down a little bit, taken in the information a little bit more, gave myself more time with the changes that I was making, my results possibly could have been a little bit better.
Yeah. And I want to get into all the changes you made and all that you have learned, because it is so helpful. And I've made changes as well, and that I've found really, really helpful. So I think from what I've seen on Instagram, you were single going into this, right? Kind of the catalyst was this breakup, but
Yeah.
somewhere along the way you found a partner.
Yes, I did.
I'd love to
So
speak to that a little bit because there's so much conversation around, dating while egg freezing, when to bring it up, how to bring it up.
yeah.
And women are kind of always like sort of trying to reconcile that, like the timing of that, should they, shouldn't they? So I'm curious sort of, yeah, your experience with it.
Yeah, this is such an important topic because I totally felt that way. I was like, okay, I don't want to be psycho and tell them all this fertility, all this personal stuff about fertility when it's like early on in a relationship. I don't want to freak them out. And I also don't want anyone to run from me because they want kids in their future and they're going to be worried that what if I can't have kids? So it's like all these thoughts were going through my mind. Yeah. So people are going to have to do whatever they feel comfortable with. But of course, I was dating while egg freezing, and I kept it to myself initially. And my now husband and we were long distance, and he was actually visiting me for the very first time after we met in Austin, but he didn't live here. So he was visiting me for the very first time. And when you're going through an egg freezing process, you don't always know exactly when your surgery is going to be because they're checking on how your follicles are growing.
Yeah.
So he had his trip planned, and my surgery was the day that he was arriving. Yeah, and he didn't know anything about this, and he was arriving in the evening. My surgery was like first thing in the morning, and I was just like, okay, we're gonna just do this. So he came in, and you would think that I would just like tell him what was going on. I didn't. I hid it from him. I was in pain. I was cramping. I was so bloated. Like I was probably acting so weird.
Oh my gosh.
And
Oh
I
my
didn't
gosh.
tell him because it was so early on. And so then by the time I did my second round of egg freezing, before I
Wait, so
even
this whole visit happens without you saying anything?
yes. Yeah. Yeah. I was in pain. Like I was really struggling. So yeah, we laugh about that now. So he left. I was like, God, I really like him, but I can't wait for him to leave because he was visiting me. Like he stayed with me and everything. So he was with me 24/7. And I was like, oh my God, I'm
Oh my
struggling.
God. Like you really had to like hold it together.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was probably not shortly after that I came clean and I was like, hey, I want to tell you what was going on when you visited. It was a few weeks later. I think I was like, you know what? I might as well weed him out now because if this scares him,
True. Yeah.
how he responds is going to like say a lot. So I told him and it was just like, I worked it up as this big thing in my mind. And then it was so not a big deal. Like he took it really seriously when I told him, but it was just like, I wish you would have told me. I could have rescheduled. I could have supported you better. Like he responded so well to it. And I think the right person is always going to respond well to it. And after that, it was really nice to like have him, by the time I did the next egg retrieval while we were dating, he was helping me with my shots. He came with me to the surgery and that was only probably like 6 months into our relationship.
Yeah.
So,
But
yeah.
how telling of what kind of partner he would be and probably even strengthened your connection with him.
I think it did. Yeah, I think it did. And I had the fears of like him wanting to have kids and being scared that I couldn't. That was never a fear in his mind. He really loved that I was doing this. And he was actually the one to encourage me to share it with my audience because I didn't share it with my audience for a whole year. I went through it just totally silently, other than, my really close friends. And he was like, I think that you could help a lot of people if you want to be open about this. And so he really encouraged me in that way. So
what do you think motivated, or what are the thoughts that motivated the hiding, like hiding it from him, hiding it from your audience? Like, what did you say to yourself about if you shared?
yeah, so this is pretty vulnerable, but I honestly felt like it made me less of a woman. It made me inferior in some way. I do not feel that way anymore. And I don't want anyone to feel that way at all. Cause there are things you can do to enhance your fertility. And even if things don't work out for you, it doesn't make you any less of a woman at all. It makes you really, really strong. So yeah, I think it was just the fear of what people would think. When it comes to my audience, it was like, what would be my intention with sharing it? Is it, and once I came to the conclusion of, I think that this is not talked about enough. Yeah. I think that I could share what I'm learning. I can share more about the process, and I can encourage women to take a look at their fertility and, decide to go this route, because there's so much that people don't know. Like even the AMH test, like people didn't even know they can get that test.
I know that's one of my questions I had for you today. And it comes up constantly, in my own life, in my work as a therapist, in my, being a host on this podcast, is this knowledge gap. So I'm curious, sort of, how surprised were you by how little maybe you knew? I know I was very surprised. I'm still learning things at 43, already having had a baby, already gone through egg freezing. Were you surprised by how little, and even as someone in the wellness space, where you were already in that space, were you surprised by how little, or frustrated by how little we know?
Yes, it was wild. Even the thought of egg freezing, I don't really know how I thought the eggs came out and how it happened, but leading up to it, I was just like years before, I would say, well, if I need to freeze my eggs, I need to freeze my eggs. No big deal. I don't know why I was like, no big deal. It is not no big deal. Like the constant appointments, blood work, sonograms, the injections, giving yourself, the side effects that they cause. And then you have to actually undergo anesthesia to get the eggs out. I don't know how I thought it all happened, but that whole world was completely unknown. And then how to check for fertility was completely unknown. Just all the different possible infertility issues that people can have, or what the impact of it from the male side is. Like, there's just so much that's not talked about. It's getting better, but it's definitely getting better, but and I'm so grateful for platforms like yours, and you're just putting out. I mean, literally, a lot of the stuff that you're putting out, and I want to get to here, is stuff I've learned in the last year doing my own research after 2 miscarriages. And so I found myself, especially again in this second phase of trying to have another, so upset and frustrated with the lack of conversation there is being more had, the lack of knowledge. I found too, like Western medicine and Eastern medicine, like more holistic, or kind of there's 2 conversations happening that are not necessarily the same. Yes.
So I think it's really, it's hard because it's such an emotional thing, but a lot of it falls on us to sort of do, like we said, be our own advocates, kind of be our own researchers, and then to find those resources like your page and other people's pages that are putting out really helpful things.
Yeah.
One thing that I want to talk to you about briefly is birth control, because I know from your story, from your content, like it was your decision to get off birth control. Mm-hmm. It sounds like it wasn't advised by your doctor. And I think, fortunately, there are a lot more conversations and understanding about birth control and the effects of birth control. But I think for so long, it was kind of like it just got prescribed for everything. And women were on it for so long without realizing what that actually meant. So I'd love for you to speak about birth control a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I think you're totally right. It was just the go-to thing. I think I was put on birth control when I was 17, maybe 18, and it was a way to regulate my period. How ironic is that? But what did it do? It just took my period away completely. And I didn't have one for the entirety of the time that I was on birth control. And I'll say this all delicately, because I'm not necessarily anti-birth control, but what the problem is that women are not told the risks. We all believed that it was a totally risk-free thing, and all we were told was the positives. You might not have a period. Wow, to an 18-year-old, that sounds fantastic. Right. It might help with your acne, so people were like, oh, awesome. This is a way to regulate my skin. But it's not really getting to the root cause, that as young women, we weren't set up to understand that. We were just told, here, take this, it'll help your skin and it'll regulate your period, without even considering what hormonally is actually going on that's causing those issues. So whenever I found out that I did have low ovarian reserve, I already had, again, it was back to this intuition of like, I don't want to be on birth control, which is a risky move when you're going to be single.
Mm.
So, yeah. So I had to learn
That's
about how
another
to
conversation you have to have with people you're dating.
exactly. That was a big one. Like I would have to tell people almost right away, like, hey, I'm not on birth control, just so you know, but I have my ways of tracking and preventing and staying safe. And so it goes back to the empowerment. If you're gonna come off birth control, you gotta tune into your body. You gotta start to track your cycle. You have to be responsible with how you want to prevent or later plan your pregnancy. And I loved coming off of birth control and getting in tune with my body, getting my cycle back, getting it regular, which that did take some time. But I began to welcome my cycle and I wanted it to come because to me it was like this is a report card from my body telling me
Yes.
things are getting better. So
What were some of the things you did to kind of get your period back? And I think I also saw something at first, it was like 35 to 45 days. And I'm curious,
yeah.
like, if someone does have a cycle that long, what might that indicate? What might that mean is happening in their body?
Yeah, 35 is still kind of considered in the normal range, but 40, 45, you've definitely got something imbalanced. And I think it can be a lot of different things. For me, it was a progesterone imbalance that was dead low to the point where it was questionable if I was even ovulating or not.
Mm,
People could have estrogen dominance, which people get confused because estrogen dominance could come from the fact you actually could have low estrogen, but you've got this excess estrogen hanging around. So your body's struggling to know, like, okay, is it time to produce estrogen or not? So something between those two is likely off if your cycles are really long. It could be high, it could be low. It could be that they're not raising at the proper time in your cycle. So for me, it was a little bit of both of those things. And then I have a really small genetic I guess you could call it a mutation or something that I'm carrying genetically that causes my DHEA to be
mm,
through the roof. And so I, with that, have slightly high testosterone. So I always say they all play really closely with each other. They all interact with each other so much. So it's usually not just one thing that's off because when
mm.
one's off, it's going to probably make something else be a little bit off. So, to answer your question, some of the things that I did to try to get my cycle back and regular was just doing things that would better support my endocrine system, which for me was mostly stress related. Mostly stress related. Some things were supplemental, like taking an omega-3 supplement, taking a magnesium. But I had to reduce the intensity of my workouts and trade some of my like sprinting, high intensity running for calm outdoor walks where I could be more of in like a meditative state and clear my head. And then I swapped to strength training and like strength training at like a nice, like slow pace as opposed
Mm.
to doing these like really intense, like combo movements, loud music, fast paced workout. So like everything just kind of had to like slow down for me. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people ignore. They want to take the supplement. They want to say, okay, just what do I have to eat? Rather than looking at like, I probably need to sleep more. I probably need to nourish my body more. I probably need to nurture myself, calm myself. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my issue. That was my issue was what, and it was interesting for me too, like after, so for my story, just to share with you, which was I had a failed transfer last November and then two miscarriages after that. And after my first miscarriage, I just went like all in on the researching and the what can I do? And like I'm grasping at control for everything. I want to talk about toxins too, but like I like revamped my kitchen, everything in my, I like was doing all of the things. And months later, I turn around and I'm like stressed out of my mind. And I'm saying to
Yeah.
myself, I might as well eat just like all the gluten and all the dairy, like all the things that I taken out because I am just like my mental health and my nervous system were all out of whack. So I love that you bring up this idea of like, and that's like something you can do and implement like right away before you buy all the supplement and it's like free. before you buy all the
Yes.
supplements and like the new cookware and stuff, and all of it isn't to talk about another expense. But I think kind of to sort of tie in like what we talk about in this podcast in terms of like messaging and narratives and what's ingrained in us, we're such this whole hustle culture. Like, and as you're describing the workout of like music and high intensity, I'm thinking of like a berries or these like classes that got so popular where we equate like that's a good workout. Like I've worked out, I've done something good for my body, but if I go for a 30-minute walk, like I haven't worked out at all. So I think it's like
Yes.
rewiring like what we're told we should do or what we're told is like healthy and a good workout.
Yes, 100%. And I'm really sorry for your losses with your miscarriages. I think that that's another topic that's probably not talked about enough, partially because it's painful, partially because people don't talk about their pregnancies early on, and that's where miscarriages typically happen. So I wanted to say that, but
Thank
you brought up control. And I think that that's a lot of people who have infertility struggles. That is probably a theme that's been around in their life previously, and all of a sudden you've got this thing, and it's like, for me, I felt like, oh, I'm this achiever where if there's something that I want, I get it. And it's not because, oh, I just get what I want, but it's because I work hard, I go after it, I do what I got to do. So something like infertility, you feel such a lack of control because you feel like it's not fully in your hands. It's something that you want that you're not sure if you're going to get, or that's how it feels at least. So part of how I kind of like cured the need of control was taking actions that I felt like were putting me in a better position for fertility. And so, yeah, that's still having control in another way, but I tried to channel it in a more healthy, calming, nourishing, like those types of words rather than the I have to, I need to, there's fear, all of those things. And
I should. Yeah.
I should, yeah. Overhauling, like feeling like I think people feel like I need to overhaul everything in my life. And so a lot of the changes you mentioned are really important changes to make. But I try to tell people do it gradually, do it slowly, make it realistic for you because the changes can't be stressful. If the changes are stressful, then you're heading in the wrong direction.
I needed to speak with you like a year ago because I was like, I have to do it all. I have to do it all right now. Just to back up a little bit, back to the egg freezing journey. So you meet your partner, you have this conversation. He's wonderful. How many rounds? You end up doing 5 rounds. And was there, did you get to where you wanted to be? Was there like this thought after 5 rounds, like, I'm good? And I'm also curious too about some of the things we're talking about now. How did you just balance life while this is like happening for this long period of time?
Yeah, I think so for your first question, I got to 17 eggs in 5 rounds, and that's not the 20 number that they gave me. And I think initially had another fear of how am I going to know when it's enough? Because I want to have multiple kids, and I don't think that that's going to be enough. And then I just decided, you know what? After the 5, like that was so much. I'm going to pause on that. And I was with someone who at this point, we knew like marriage was in our future down the road. We weren't even engaged yet, but I could see this future with him. So I was like, I think I'm just going to put it on pause, and I'm going to actually just work on things more on the root cause of things. Like I'm going to look into my hormones, get hormones tested, make these changes so that I'm not doing nothing. I'm just not freezing my eggs anymore. I'm going to go on this kind of like only holistic journey and head in that direction and see how I feel. If I want to go do another round, then I will. And then I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question? You were asking
how did you just balance life? I'll share personally for me, I've definitely gotten into a better place, but like when fertility and wanting children was so forefront of my mind, like it consumed everything. Like I would wake up thinking about it. It infiltrated a lot of conversations in my relationship that were really hard. It was just, there was this ebb and flow of like being present and being grateful versus like, this fucking sucks. And like, is this ever going to happen? And it just kind of became, there's moments where it becomes really, or has for me, all consuming.
Yes. And I went through the same thing, and therapy is the best. Yeah. Therapy is huge. Therapy and journaling. I would journal my fears and what I was grateful for every day. And I was just really big on you can call it prayer, manifesting, whatever, but getting your mind into that positive state of just, it was just really comforting for me to tell myself, I'm doing everything that I can. I'm doing everything that I can. I'm taking all the steps that I possibly can and should be taking, and to just be at peace with, just to have to be at peace with that. Like, I think people really, really, really need to find peace with whatever they're doing. And that's going to be one of the most healing and healthy things that you can do for yourself. And I also think having the support system, but I think you said like sometimes it could totally consume everything that you're doing. So having support is nice, but also you can tell someone, I don't really want to talk about it today. And that's okay too. Like, thank you for being there for me, but it's just a little too much for me right now. And I would love to just like talk about anything else. And you can say that too, because I think dwelling too much on it and hyper focusing isn't going to be good either. It's just back to that balance and setting boundaries and having the people close to you just understand, like, you might not know what you're going to get with me. I might really want to talk about it. And then there might be another day where I'm like, nope, no, can't talk about it today. It's too much.
Yeah. And I think it's amazing to be able to communicate that to your support system and people around you, because often what comes up too is like, how do you help a friend going through this? And I think there's well-intentioned friends or family members that just don't really know what to say. So I think it's helpful for people on the other side to say, here's what I need now, or here's what I don't need now. It's just a good, guidance for them.
Yes, there was definitely really frustrating things that people said, but it was so hard for me because I'm like, I know that they meant this from a good place, but like, I'm sure anyone else going through this has heard it just takes one good egg. I'm like,
yay.
Thank you.
I know. I think we could come up with so many things. Yeah, I've done a reel on like what not to say.
Yeah, and I would just try to kind of, there was sometimes if you got lucky, I would brush it off. If you got unlucky that day, I might come back with you and say something not very nice. Depends what I was going through at the time. So I cannot say that my journey was perfect at all. Yeah.
Oh my God. No, it never is. Every journey, no journey is perfect. I'm curious too, like, so you are already kind of in this wellness space, then you find out about your low ovarian reserve. It starts this journey of the egg freezing. Is that when you started to shift your focus and your work more towards like hormone health, fertility health? And I've learned too that like fertility health is an indicator of overall health. So it kind of all goes together. But did you really start to shift your focus to that based on your own experience?
Yes, definitely on my own experience. And I think it just became such a passion of mine. And usually passions come out of suffering. And so I think I just channeled that. And aside from my own experience, I just really, really delved into research and learning, and all the things that we can do to take action, because I knew that was what helped me. And it just kind of became my mission to help other people going through it. And you're totally right. It was an easy thing, because it's funny, like all of the fertility advice that I give is really just something that would help anybody to feel their best. Anybody, men and women. I said something the other day on my page, and a man DM'd me and was like, is this something that I should do too, or is this just for like women and fertility? And I said, I know I talk about women and fertility a lot, but this is something that's good for anyone. I think it was about taking minerals, but
I just ordered the ones that you talked about. I just literally just came today. I just ordered them. Nice. Well, talk about conversations that aren't happening a lot is male. I don't want to get into it here now, but like male infertility is not really talked about.
Absolutely.
Or at all. So there's a big gap there.
Yeah.
What are some things that you feel like is really important for women to know, or maybe take notice of? We talked a little bit about like longer cycles. Are there other signs that women can kind of like tune into that might indicate like hormones are imbalanced?
Yeah, I think painful periods and bad cramps is also another sign that something could be off. I would say if you're looking at the other areas of your health, that's probably going to clue you in too. So if you are like wired and tired, so you feel so tired during the day, but then when you go to bed, you can't go to sleep, or no matter how much sleep you get, you wake up and you still feel tired. What's another one? Obviously, if you're living in a state of constant stress, and the reason why these things are going to impact fertility is because everyone says the word hormones very generally. And I try to be aware of it. Like I say hormones because I think most people know what I mean, but really we have so many hormones in the body that do different things, and they're not all related to fertility, but many of them impact fertility. So
Mm,
while, cortisol is the stress hormone that everyone has all heard about, it plays with, like I say, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, growth hormone, insulin. So then we look at blood sugar. So if someone's got an insulin issue, they could have a hormonal imbalance, or vice versa. Like people with PCOS usually have insulin resistance.
mm-hmm.
So they do all interact with each other. So while some people might get flack for just like saying hormones and, well, what hormones are you talking about? It's like you are kind of talking about any of those big players because they do interact with each other. So melatonin, for example, of course, we know that impacts sleep. It's in an inverse relationship with cortisol. And so then we're back to the cortisol impacting the estrogen and progesterone. And so that's why if you've got some kind of hormonal imbalance, you could have trouble balancing blood sugar or trouble with your weight. You could have trouble sleeping. You could have trouble with your energy levels. So it really is so all interconnected.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
someone wants to find out, like, I know for myself, like my fertility doctor didn't do some of this testing. So I sought out like other resources and functional medicine. Like, where might someone go to find out, like, what is progesterone looking like? What's my estrogen looking like? Where is my cortisol? Where would
Yeah.
people seek out that info?
Yeah. So I mean, the most cost effective option is a blood test. But the problem with that is it's not really giving you the full picture. It's giving you like one pinpoint in time. So it is a little bit of an investment, but I think the best, most comprehensive test is the Dutch test, which is a dried urine test. And men can do it as well, but if you're a woman, you're going to do it. You basically pee on pieces of paper and you let them dry out and you send them in, and you'll do it on particular days all throughout your cycle. And it gives so much detailed information about estrogen, estradiol, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, cortisol, dopamine, and norepinephrine, like anything you can think of. And it'll also show like your pathways. So there's a ton of pictures and graphs. And then it'll show a map of your cycle and where your hormones are at the different parts of your cycle. And I've done the Dutch test like 2 or 3 times. And when I first did it, everything was so like it was low when it was supposed to be high. It was high when it was supposed to be low. And I really didn't even have a ton of symptoms other than I knew the low AMH thing. So it was like, yeah, it was surprising.
It's hard to get those. I know for me, it was emotional for me to get those tests back to just see like
Yeah.
something is wrong and something is off. And same as you, like I literally no, I still don't have symptoms, and I wouldn't have discovered some of the things that I've discovered. Like I have Hashimoto's, high thyroid antibodies. And I know that's a big thing in fertility that I've learned that impacts fertility. But I think it's helpful to say, like, there are things you can do when you like when I was working with was like, I liked how she said, these are healing opportunities, right? So
Oh,
if
yeah, I
you're
love
somebody
that.
that gets these results back and it's upsetting, totally normalizing that, like it definitely, it is, but maybe moving from there to like, okay, there's something I can do now. There's like, there's a healing opportunity here. So I love that shift because it can
Yeah,
be
I
really
love that.
hard to get those results back and see, oh my God, my body's not doing this, or this is wrong, or this is off the charts. Like for me, I never did the Dutch testing. So that was interesting to learn about, but something always came back wrong in my tests. And so it's
Yeah,
hard to see that, but then there's action steps. So I found that like reassuring.
exactly. And I know not everyone can go to a functional doctor because they don't typically, as I'm aware, don't really take insurance. Mine doesn't. But back to the investment piece, if you think you can possibly afford it, if it's a priority of yours, I would recommend it because they're going to help you interpret these results and give you the actions that you need to take. So like I did not do this all on my own. I still have my functional doctor. And initially I had to see her more frequently. I was on more supplements. It was more expensive, all the testing. And as you resolve things, because they're in the business of getting to the root cause, the goal is eventually we don't have to do these tests anymore because everything's good. We can see you less often. You can come off of most of those supplements. Whereas I feel like in the traditional medical system, while they have really beneficial medications and interventions when we need them, sometimes that's just what the jump is, straight to that. And then they might tell you something like, yeah, you got to be on this for the rest of your life with no empowerment at all. So
yeah, lots of thoughts on that.
yeah, maybe for another day. Yeah.
Another episode. We'll have you back for sure. One other question I have for you, and then I saw two of your posts that I wanted to touch on, and then and then one final amazing question. But you talk about blood building foods, and if you could share what some of those are and why blood building is important in relation to fertility.
Yeah. So this was a cool learning for me. I think early on that was really helpful in getting my cycle back. So blood building is all about nourishing the blood. And I love how nature kind of just works out so nicely for us. Pretty much any foods in nature that look like blood are going to help build your blood. So this would be pomegranates, beets, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, anything that's like that dark purple or dark red. And this can be red meat as well. Of course, I would say get high quality, but and then there's some outliers like wheatgrass doesn't look like blood, but it is a really good nourishing blood builder, as well as spirulina. So the concept behind this is if you have really nice nourished blood and you have really good circulation, you're going to be able to have effective transport of your hormones, but also with nourished blood and proper circulation, you're able to kind of pretty much feed all the organs in your body with what they need. So that was a big one for me. And obviously with our periods, we know there's blood involved, and you have to have blood there, and you lose blood. So the blood building for me, I think, made a huge difference. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it was a huge learning for me too. So I loved sharing that there. Okay, I have two posts that I loved. I mean, I love all your stuff. It's so amazing.
Thanks.
But one thing I want to touch on is lessons September have taught me. And we talked a little bit about it here, but one of them being the harder we try to control the outcome and the further away from it we get. And the other one is that I love, there's trust that you are exactly where you need to be. Timing is everything. And the question of when have things not worked out in the end. I thought those were really, really powerful and speak to a lot of the topics that we talk about on here, that we've talked about today in terms of like control and timing, and sort of how did you come to those? And you talked a little bit about it already, but I just felt like that was such a really important and powerful post.
Thank you. Yeah, I think to the second one, like when have things not worked out, I even have a tattoo of this on my body that says Amor Fati, which is love of one's fate. And it's not just about like loving, it's not exactly how it sounds, like just loving your fate, but it's all about, we have these things in our life that we perceive as bad, and then sometimes we perceive them as good, when really it's kind of just a stoicism where they're really just necessary things that you learn from that project you down your path of where you're meant to be, and kind of like detaching yourself from something that might seem really bad in the moment. Like you have no idea where that's going to end up taking you. And a lot of times, I think there was some kind of stat, I don't know how they figured this out, that 85% of what we worry about never happens.
Yeah.
Not a surprise, right? Not a surprise.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a mantra for me. And tied with that one, I've always told myself what's meant for you won't miss you. But if you try to force, control, do things that are not aligned with what your true values are and who you are, you're moving away from what's meant for you, because you're not acting as you. You're acting kind of as like someone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
like we were saying earlier, sort of that urgency sort of shapes or dictates decisions or just how you move through the day. I had
Yeah.
someone say to me that I was working through sort of in the depths of my fertility stuff. And she posed that question to me of like, when have things not worked out? And I immediately just started crying because I'm like,
Oh,
they've never not worked out and they've worked out better. And I think it's just kind of being able to stay connected to that and so important. And I hugely believe too, like we are where we are meant to be. I love what you said about fate and just kind of being in gratitude and acceptance of our own journeys and the uniqueness of our own journeys and timelines. And I love that
exactly.
post. I love that post so much. And the other post, I
Thanks.
mean, again, I love all your posts. The other one I loved was like, if I could talk to myself in my 20s and the things that you would have said to her. And I think that was also amazing because I think there's so much to pay for. I mean, of course, to ourselves looking back, it's like 2020, but I think there's, and this is what you're doing with your platform, there's so much to pay forward to like younger generations of changes they can make now and ways of living they can integrate now that will just set them up for success in life, in fertility, and overall health. So if you could speak to that a little bit, I love that post.
Yeah, that post was almost like therapeutic for me because I was inclined to post it because I kept actually like, have you ever been in a situation where maybe you've gotten in like an argument with someone and in the moment you didn't think to say all this stuff, but later on
Oh,
you
yeah.
replay it in your head and you're like, oh, I should have said that. I found myself almost like doing that with myself in the past. Like, oh, if I could have just like gone back, I wish I would have known this and I wish I would have known that. And it was kind of like a negative thing. And so I made that post as almost just like more of a loving way to speak to my past self. And I
Mm,
thought, like maybe someone else is in my situation and this can resonate with them.
totally.
But I think we always do the best with the information that we have in the moment. And so
I
it's
know.
really easy in hindsight to say should have, would have, could have. But that's what wisdom is all about. It unfortunately it comes later. So,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
just like back to being at peace. I did the best I could at the time and that's enough. So
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful reminder. It's actually something I use with my clients a lot is like you made the decision in that moment based on what you knew and what you were feeling. And you have to remember that. And it's so easy to play like Monday morning quarterback. Um,
yeah.
yeah, totally. Oh my God.
Exactly.
I've totally had that experience of like, oh my God, that would have been the perfect thing to say. Or why didn't I do? I think we
Yeah.
can get stuck down those rabbit holes so easily. Like if I had just done this, or if I didn't do that. And it's like, I think shifting it to what can I learn from that and what do I want to do differently now? And like, what is being in that situation taught me? Um,
Yes, absolutely.
Before we wrap up, I could talk to you forever. I seriously might have to have you come back on.
I would
Um,
love to. Yeah.
could you share with everybody where you are now?
Yes, I would love to share where I am now. So at the time that we're talking, this is a little early, but by the time this comes out, I think I will probably have already announced this to the world. But I am currently pregnant. Very excited.
So
I'm
exciting.
6 weeks right now, so it's super early, but it's very exciting. And I did not know I was going to end up here, of course. So it's back to like the everything works out. And when I made that post of the lessons that I learned in September, I did not know that I was pregnant yet. And I started to feel that sense of control, that sense of fear coming back. What if it's not going to happen? What if? And I just felt like, oh my gosh, the more I try to force this and overthink this and stress about this, I'm not doing good for my body right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the worrying about it isn't helping me get pregnant at all. It's hurting me, as a matter of fact. So I just had to like set myself free from all of that and just do my best to
Mm.
relax. And it's so hard. And then, yeah, it happened. So
So without the, I'm assuming without the eggs, just with on.
without, yeah, without the eggs, it just happened naturally, which again, I was totally prepared to use the eggs. I didn't know when we were going to jump to that. It was 3 months of us trying, which I'm incredibly grateful for. Of course, I'm in that cautious state right now as you've experienced, miscarriage. Right now what I'm struggling with is a daily constant fear of miscarriage and trying to
For
tell
sure.
myself
For sure.
like I need to enjoy, and be happy for this experience that I'm having right now. I don't know if it might result. in miscarriage, but I don't want it to rob me of the joy that I should be feeling right now.
Yeah. And I think everything you just said, prior to finding out you were pregnant, and everything you've been saying today is just like freeing yourself of the fear and the worry is so important. Not that that's not going to come in, but like trying to not be in that more than you're in like joy and excitement. Well, I am so excited for you. And I think kind of just where we come full circle. And this is kind of what we were saying offline via email is like, this is so hopeful for other women. And I think this is a testament that you can change your fertility and you can change sort of your hormones. And, I think there's a lot of unhelpful narratives out there that you can't, that your quality is your quality, your levels are your levels, your age is your age. And I think your story is such a testament to that's not necessarily true. There's so many things within your control to do to change the outcomes.
Exactly. Yeah. I hope that this does provide some hope to others. Of course, everyone's situation is going to be different. And like we said, I've been on this journey for like 4 years now. So it's not like it didn't just happen in the 3 months that we tried. I started doing things, years ago. So it was still a slow healing journey, and we're still figuring things out as we go and doing the best we can. But I'm trying to be just as joyful and peaceful as I can in this moment, because it's something that I've wanted for a really, really long time. So I'm really happy and I'm really excited.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so happy for you. Just one last thing before we wrap, tell everybody where they can find you. I know you have some amazing offerings. If you just want to share that here quickly.
Yeah, thank you. You can find me at Bare Nutrition Health, and it's Bare like BARE. The whole concept is to try to simplify health, get back to the basics. So that's kind of where the name comes from, but it's Bare Nutrition Health on Instagram and TikTok. And I do have a program called Hormone Harmony. That's a totally self-paced online program. It does involve some videos from me, a lot of course content. It comes with a meal plan. So that's kind of my main offer based on everything we've talked about today. It's just become such a passion of mine, and I want to share everything that I've been able to do and everything that I've researched with others to hopefully make it a more simple, clear-cut journey for other people.
It can be overwhelming to search it all out yourself too. So what you've created to find it all in one space is amazing. And we'll share it on our page also, because it's amazing. Lauren, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation and having you here today.
Thank you. I enjoyed it as well. And I'm happy to come back anytime. Thanks.
Oh my God. You're coming back for sure.
You guys, I do not get on a flight anymore without my Bombas compression socks. They are a travel staple for me, especially on longer flights. The socks help improve blood flow from your legs to your heart, which obviously is so essential. I just love these socks so much, and I want you guys to have an opportunity to check out these socks too. So use our code QTC20 for 20% off your first purchase of Bombas. Hey guys, I'm Beth. Thank you so much for tuning in to Quiet the Clock. If you want to hear more episodes and learn more about how to dismantle societal timelines, live life on your own terms, live life fully and authentically, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and you can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Quiet the Clock Pod. You guys, I'm really excited. We just created all this amazing merch. And so if you're loving the podcast and you want to support our cause and continue to hear amazing episodes, please support us by buying some merch. I am living in these sweatshirts every day. We have a range of colors. We have hoodies, we have mugs, we have hats, we have journals. We have all of the things, and I love having them on because it's just a reminder to quiet the clock, to slow down, to like let life unfold and be happy. So there's meaning and purpose behind wearing it too, which is a nice reminder. So check out our website, quiettheclock.com, to get your merch.